You're listening to the Freedom Talk Radio Network and the Fleet Entertainment Television Group. We are voices from around the world. We have live shows every day. Visit the station's website and register to comment and share stories. Why don't you be a writer for the network at www.freedomtalkradio.co.uk. We are looking for new show hosts, guests and volunteers. If you could help, please email freedomtalkradio2013@gmail.com or add us to your Skype Freedom Talk Radio 1. Andy and Bill wishes you a great day.
freedomtalkradio.co.uk.
Let's go!
This is the most diverse, most amazing, one of the funniest radio stations you could ever listen to on the internet. I've heard so much stuff from the ups, the downs, the left, the right.
The politics, the non-politics, the schmolitics, whatever you want to call them.
It's great.
Yeah, very warm welcome. This is Andy Peacher, and it's a Wednesday version of the Famillies Reunited show. Today, I have very great pleasure in welcoming Kevin Annett, the Reverend Kevin Annett, all about the genocide of the children in Canada. We've got later on coming up a bit of common law with Troy, Sash and Laura. You've heard them before, but welcome to the show, Kevin. It gives me a great honour and sometimes goose pimples in my spine just to speak to you, because you're a wonderful person and you're doing a lot more than a lot of people are.
Thanks, Andy. It's really good to be on the show again.
Yes, good to have you. You've got an update, I believe, regarding the Pope, is it, and the Queen? Well,
there's a whole bunch of stuff. Let me start at the latest posting up today at our tribunal website, www.itccs.org. The Canadian government and various provincial governments this last Friday actually, finally confirmed what we've been saying for it's been 17 years now, that there was a massive death rate in the Indian boarding schools run by the Catholic and Protestant churches, the Church of England and the government, of course. And they're now saying tens of thousands, which they were absolutely denying before. But their own records confirm this. Records which previously had been sealed. And, what I often say to people is, well, if those records are around now, they were around 15, 17 years ago when we were first saying this. So obviously they've been, and we know from insiders who have come out recently that the government did allow the churches to censor and destroy records for many years. But even with that, even the records that remain are still confirming that tens of thousands of children died because of a deliberate policy of trying to wipe them out. And this is something that not only we've been saying, but it was the basis of our conviction in the Common Law Court last year of Elizabeth Windsor, Pope Benedict, the Prime Minister of Canada, and other officials in church and state. So in effect, I mean, this has great repercussions because it means that they're not even denied it anymore. They are standing guilty as charged of genocide. So that was a tremendous breakthrough. And it came in the same week that there was another, kind of admission of this in Rome itself, where the Italian bishops announced, the Catholic bishops said that they were not going to report child rape when it happens. And Pope Francis, who's, of course, posing as a great reformer and everything, came out and affirmed that. He said that Italian bishops don't have to tell the police when children are harmed. So, they're doing this two-faced thing. On the one hand, claiming that they're looking into this child rape within the Catholic Church. On the other hand, doing the old game of covering it up. So all of that, I hope, is going to awaken more people to really what we're dealing with, this whole system of child killing all over the planet and child trafficking.
Absolutely. And 2 points on that from my point of view, and Maggie might have one in a minute as well. I know she was listening in, but you've touched on something that she's familiar with. But the first point is 17 years ago you told everybody this, and it's now coming to light. Now, a few years ago, Maggie can probably just confirm this with you, but we had a politician, one of the ministers, saying that children who are in the care system, if they're being abused, they're not allowed to tell.
That's right. I mean, it's a standard. It isn't just the Catholic Church and their policy of, excommunicating priests if they talk about child rape. It's a standard policy we find in the so-called child protection systems in every country in the world, where you scratch the surface, look at this stuff. I remember last time I was in England in 2011, it came out in the Telegraph newspaper that over 500 children were missing, and they couldn't find them, and that's probably a conservative estimate. And yet there had been a long history of social workers and that knowing about this, but being told not to disclose any of that. So I think that this is, the standard protocol. When you're protecting the perpetrators, it means that it's a system at work. It isn't just random abusers.
Yeah, well, current figures at the moment is over 100,000, up to 140,000 children go missing. 10% are never found, and of 10,000 that are in the care system, 10% of them are never found. So where do they go? I mean, we joke about, do they end up in McDonald's burgers, but, where do they go?
Well, it isn't just human trafficking, which of course is a big market. Like, we know that the Catholic Church operates through their adoption agencies and foster care systems. They have a huge baby trafficking network where they identify children, moms who are like the Magdalene Laundry situation in Ireland, where young women who got pregnant would lose their baby and then be stuck in these sweatshops for the rest of their lives, the Magdalene Laundries. But those babies would then be trafficked for a lot of money. And we also know the darker side of this is the satanic sacrificial cults that utilize the newborn and young children. There was, again, at itccs.org, we've had several insiders come forward to describe this so-called ninth circle sacrificial cult, which operates in Europe and North America, and probably other places too. And it involves former popes, high officials, of church and state. And a member of parliament in Belgium, Laurent Louis, has just the other day named the Prime Minister of Belgium as a participant in these child trafficking cults. So, I mean, this is all beginning to come out now.
And so it should, but, it's going to take a long, long time, I think, before every child's safe and every parent knows where their children are. Which is a shame.
Well, it's this whole. I mean, when you're, I often wonder. I say to people, for a humanity that's so under attack, that's at war, where people who are facing threats at so many levels, people are incredibly passive and placid, and it takes shocks like this to wake them up as to what they're really part of. And I guess that's one of the advantages of bringing this stuff out. I find that if you tell too much of the truth to people too quickly, the mind just shuts down. But you have to feed them this in pieces. And the amazing thing, it's not even denied anymore by the system. They're openly acknowledge this, flaunting this knowledge almost, and then I guess they assume people are not going to feel capable of doing anything about it.
Yeah, a lot of parents anyway that we talk to, they just kind of go around in the daze. Is this real? Is this really happening? It really is happening until people get up and make a stand, and say, look, there's no more of this. I mean, we could have a public inquiry into the child snatching over here, but there's not enough people together to do it. And we're trying to encourage them through common law or just common sense, to do something, Kevin. And it's very hard. I mean, and I look at the example, it's very easy because if we've got hundreds of people doing that, and there's one guy in Canada doing it by himself, and okay, he's got a lot of followers now, but you started off by yourself. Why can't the British people get together and save these children from horrific, issues?
Well, one thing led to another, and all you have to do with this work is stay at it. Persistence is the key virtue in this. And, even courage, I mean, it comes from a stubbornness once you learn that children are being harmed, and your conscience says, well, how can you turn away at that point? But if you stay persistent on any of this, it all surfaces, and then people need a tool, a way to fight back, not just sharing information. And that's why how precious these common law courts are, because they're training people to take back the law, to take back their own society and the law, to serve them rather than the perpetrators.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've heard from Laura, Stash and Troy, and we'll probably hear from them again a little bit later on, of how easy it is in a way to get elected in your local area. I think it's the persistence again to do that. Are you allowed to talk about your forthcoming trip?
Well, some details I won't mention, but yeah, definitely.
Yeah, no, just that you're over in the UK in the summer, and last time, of course, they wouldn't let you in, would they?
Well, that was at Stansted Airport. I was coming back from Holland in late May in 2011, and they ran my passport through the computer. The guy looked a bit alarmed, and then he started asking me a lot of questions. They held me in the immigration prison there for a whole day and fingerprinted me and the whole bit. Never gave me a reason, never gave me their names. But the next week I was to speak at the annual the child abuse rally, where they described the involvement of members of the government and the royal family in the child trafficking in England. They do an annual rally there. I think they're connected to the Holy Greek campaign. And they had asked me to come and speak there. So I'm sure it was related to that. But, you know, I mean, it's what we realize in all this work, what I've had to learn is that once you stand on this truth and you're outside their kind of the energy they operate in, which is one based totally on fear. Once you stand outside that, then the kind of overt control they have over you really diminishes. I found that going through customs all the time. You know, you look people right in the eye, you just tell them what you're doing, and most of the time, I never have any problem. So I'm coming on mid-April, first to Brussels and doing work there with the latest common law court case, which has to do with the whole child trafficking issue. We've named as 3 defendants Jorge Bergoglio, the so-called Pope Francis, and I'm going to mention in a bit how we think he's not actually the Pope. Justin Welby, who's the Archbishop of Canterbury, and Adolfo Pachon, who's head of the Jesuits. And they're the primary defendants. We're looking at naming other defendants as well, like this Judge Fulford in England, who's connected to this notorious group PI, the Pedophile Information Exchange, that advocate lowering the age of consent to 4 years old. These people are all going to be named in the opening case. It starts next week in Brussels, and the prosecution has already, put forward their evidence for this. They're going to be presenting it. I'm going to help get that information out to the world. But then after that, I'll probably be going down to Rome. And on April 24th, I'm to speak at Cambridge University. The Cambridge Union is sponsoring a debate on the issue. Get this is their title. Is the Catholic Church a force for good in the world? And I'm supposed to, well, you know what side I'm going to argue. But that's April 24th in Cambridge. And then after that, I'm speaking all through the Midlands and Coventry and Birmingham, where there's a common law courts being set up, and going down to London, Glastonbury, all over. So I will send you my itinerary for the last half of April and early May when I'll be in the UK.
Yeah, that'll be good. And if you're near London, you know what we discussed earlier, and I've put all the details in your Skype box.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, tell us then, because obviously it's to people listening to you, how do you try and take the Pope and the Queen of England to court? I mean, how is that possible, and how are you going to physically get them to court, or do you try them in their absence?
Well, they're being tried in absentia. Now, don't forget, for people who haven't heard this for the first time, if you go to itccs.org, you'll see that last February we had a 4-month-long common law trial into the whole issue of genocide in Canada. We've got all the exhibits posted up online showing that Elizabeth Windsor was not only, as head of the state and church, responsible for these crimes, but personally she was involved in abducting 10 Native children from a residential school in British Columbia, and those children were never seen again. On the basis of that evidence, when the guilty verdict came down in February 2013, these people had admitted by their absence and their non-response under the law, that means it's called nolo contendere. It means that they don't contest what they're being charged with. They're not disputing it. And in fact, it's a tacit admission of guilt. And that means that in any court of law, the prosecution can go ahead and try them in their absence. And that's exactly what's happened before. It's happening again because none of these latest defendants, Pope Francis or anybody, are responding. So they're saying, no, we're not going to defend our name. We're not going to challenge what's being said about us. That's very significant legally. And in terms of the enforcement, well, we may not have the power immediately to go and apprehend these people and put them in the clink somewhere, but by their actions, it might as well be happening because Pope Benedict steps down in the same 2-week period that the verdict comes in. So did another cardinal that we named, Tarcisio Bertone, the Secretary of State. He had been named in our court case, and he also stepped down. I mean, they are proving by their actions what we're saying. And, so there are many ways of skinning a cat here.
It all sounds amazing. I don't know if Laura, Troy, or Stash got any questions at this point. Troy, what about you?
Yeah, a whole bunch of questions come to mind. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, my friend.
Yeah. I guess the first question I have is anything happening with Canada in relation to what we're doing here with the National Liberty Alliance? I mean, is Canada trying to establish its own or join forces with the National Liberty Alliance?
Yeah, well, I know that you see in Canada, like in England, we're a lot further behind than you guys in America because you have a tradition there of the common law being actually entrenched more in your system. I remember, you probably know about this, Judge Scalia came out in the U.S. Supreme Court, actually described the grand jury system in America as a fourth arm of government that stood right outside the judicial system. It was another check and balance on the judges. And you also have the tradition of the sheriffs in your country who are elected and accountable to the local community, not to the federal government. I mean, all of that is giving you incredible weapons to use. And I think, I've found most of the common law people I'm working with are actually based in America. I have been in touch, with some of the Liberty Alliance people in New York and New Jersey. We're working with some mothers in New Jersey who are trying to get their children back after being fraudulently grabbed by the courts there. And, the same old story of child trafficking in the system. But, I think that Canadians are certainly learning. There have been a couple of attempts to set up common law courts in Canada, one in Kitchener, one out in Vancouver here, over other issues too, not just about the child trafficking, but chemical spraying. I was just in South Dakota meeting with a bunch of farmers who are very concerned about chemtrails and chemical spraying. They see it all the time. And they're also trying to set up their own court around the issue of fraudulent mortgages and how they're having their land and homes grabbed illegally with help of compliant judges. So this has many ramifications.
Yeah, thank you. I'm happy to hear that we're all trying to pull this together and make it work.
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and yield to somebody else that might have a question at this time. So thank you.
I was just curious because I was under the impression that the actual sheriff, the idea of a sheriff, came from the UK. I mean, if you go all the way back to the sheriff of Nottingham in ancient lore, is that a government office as such or a civilian office in the UK?
It's a good question whether that's still operative in England. You're absolutely right. It did come from, all of this stuff came from England. Their Saxon traditions like the shire courts, the sheriffs, these were all local legal mechanisms. And, the Pope and the Crown came in later to try to nullify that. And maybe to a large extent they have, because I don't know whether sheriffs in England or even, have that ability anymore. That don't forget, of course, in America, you specifically repudiated Crown courts. I remember reading some really amusing stuff about how even before the American Revolution, all through Vermont, Ethan Allen and had this guerrilla movement going where they would go in and toss the Crown judges off the bench and lock up the courts. They'd nail the courts up because they knew that these courts were working basically to allow the land speculators in New York to grab all the farmers' land. And these Crown judges would literally be chased out of the community. Well, I mean, when your nation's born that way, you have that tradition, whereas in England, there was this whole counter-revolution after Cromwell to kind of destroy any of that Republican or common law tradition. So I think we're fighting more of a uphill thing here in England and in Canada. But nevertheless, the seed of that is still in their culture and in people's minds. So that's what we're appealing to.
Well, over here in England anyway, the sheriff at the moment, they're very senior debt collectors. But the sheriff in Scotland is a senior judge. No, he's a standard judge. So we call the judges in Scotland sheriffs, whereas in England they're judges. But the sheriff in England's a debt collector, if that makes sense.
Right, well, I think that answers my question.
Remember the whole incident that happened in Birkenhead a few years ago when the citizens all went in and tossed that judge off the bench when he was bringing that illegal county tax in? That was really impressive. And I mean, that's the kind of thing that we rely on, that kind of citizen action,
Well, absolutely,
again, citizens taking action. And I know in America we have been so browbeaten and put in so much fear that most Americans don't feel they have any power at all. And this is what we're trying to overcome, the inertia and as what you were describing earlier, the cognitive dissonance that this just can't be true.
Yeah. You find that, I travel a lot, and I find the people in their communities who are organizing and fighting back, they're all very glum when it has to do with their local people because, any system of tyranny always seems very established until the very moment it falls. And we see all the problems up close. But the funny thing about human beings is that they're pushed to a certain point, and then they snap, and things come down in a moment. And that, we find that in history and recently all over the world that happening. So we just have to keep being persistent, and people come to us from all over.
Well, I'm glad to see it moving in a peaceful direction because one of my greatest concerns is that, well, in this case, whoever fires the first shot loses in our country. We want a peaceful transition, a peaceful revolution as such. And for the most part, it's running peacefully on the biggest battlefield in the world, which is the internet right now, and we're having a revolution of consciousness, but I'm hoping that in doing so, it doesn't get so many people so uptight that they just go out in their neighborhood with a gun and start shooting any kind of authority figure.
Right, well, it doesn't even have to come to that. I mean, I work a lot with people who have been put through horrible torture, and their anger and rage is totally understandable. The way we channel that is by saying, we have the truth and the law on our side. There's no reason to have to pick up a gun. We're actually we have issued stand-down orders to the police in Commonwealth countries. The judges, the police, their oaths of allegiance to Elizabeth Windsor are now null and void because she's a convicted felon. And we have to create the alternative, and we do that all the time. And I've seen this work. When we've done church occupations in Vancouver, I make a point of going and talking to the police and telling them that this is involving, churches that are openly trafficking children. And when they start learning this stuff, they don't interfere. They often will stand back. I've never been in a situation where we're arrested for doing a church occupation because these are tax-supported, public institutions. We're just peacefully going in there, and we're appealing to the hearts and minds of people. So that gives us a tremendous high ground, which in any battle is a great strategic advantage,
I understand that. Unfortunately, here in America, they have been busily militarizing our police so heavily and changing their attitudes so that they're, you're the ultimate authority. Nobody can argue with you, and too many of them have taken it seriously, and we see reports every day of police beatings and shootings and whatever. So it's they're bringing it right down to the neighborhood level.
It's true, and we can't underestimate that. I know that in where I was in South Dakota, they've actually done training workshops, and they've invited some of the local sheriffs and even serving military to come and listen to what the common law movement is all about. It's nothing. It's not even civil disobedience. It's appealing to the Constitution and to the oath they took to protect the Constitution, which is being violated by the way it's going, as you're describing.
Well, this is one of the bases for the creation of a group called the Oath Keepers.
Right.
And they're growing in Constitutional Sheriffs of America. The movement is growing. I'm just, you see the government fighting back at every turn and doing outrageous things. So it seems like such a monumental battle, but we've taken it on, of course, one county at a time. Think globally, but act locally.
Yeah. That's right. And those are signs of desperation, acts of violence and intimidation by the state. It means they're desperate and they're on the defensive.
Just like in any argument, I get into a lot of disagreements on Facebook because I'm very politically active. But when it comes to the point that someone starts calling names, they've lost the argument because they have nothing credible to add after that point.
Right.
Anyway, I'm more right at the moment quite interested in what it is you're doing. So.
Indeed. Thank you so much, Kevin.
Thank you, brother.
I was a single parent for 17 years, and there was nothing in the world that was more important than my child. I stayed home from my career as an entertainer to raise my daughter, and I watched her every minute, and some thought I was too strict, but with what you're describing, you can't be too strict.
Right. It's true. Yep.
So,
Anyway,
Kevin, I have one question for you about the Republic of Canada. Is that marked? Is there some kind of date in mind for a press release so that the people of Canada? I have probably maybe half a dozen people I speak to on a regular basis up in Canada, and none of them have heard a thing about the Republic of Canada. So I've been telling them about it.
That's good. It's in the formative stages, and the people, I'll tell you what it is it started back in Winnipeg, with my hometown actually, and they've been throwing the idea around to people, and what they want to do is, especially since this latest disclosure about how openly criminal the Crown and these institutions are, they want to act. So on July 1st, they're having a meeting in Winnipeg to try to hammer out a document, in effect, the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. And they want to form committees all over the country to start circulating the stuff and getting people to sign up. So I think it's the next logical step for all of this stuff. I mean, you need to cut ties with the Crown. Sure. And so you need a Constitution and a Republic, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's fantastic news. I'm excited.
Yeah, if you... Andy has my email, so you can get them to write to me, and I'll keep them posted about. There's actually an email. I've got their email for the Republic Organizing Committee, and I'll just send it right now.
Okay, thank you. And you and I are connected through Skype as well.
Okay. Thank you, brother.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, does Laura want to have a question for Kevin? I know you've been quiet in the background there. No, maybe not.
She's such a night owl, maybe she went back to sleep.
No, I know she's listening in. I just talked to her on Skype, so she is listening on the call. He says that she'll be able to give her full attention to it in just a minute, is what she says. So she will be right with us.
Okay.
So anyway, I'm more right now really interested in hearing more on your action plan there, Kevin.
Okay. Well, it's become much bigger than myself. You know, for people who don't know, the tribunal that I work with is now working in 26 countries. And these are groups of people who are not always working with this whole common law thing, because in some countries there isn't a tradition of that at all. Like, for example, there's in Egypt and Pakistan, people are documenting child trafficking with us, and they are doing, you know, a lot of publicity and trying to reach out to people the way we are here. So it takes many different forms. In South Africa, they're establishing a common law court because they, again, have the same Commonwealth connection in that. So it really varies all over the place. And what we are doing, though, is making this case of child trafficking that's going to commence on April 7th kind of a centerpiece for a lot of what we're doing, because it really is, in a lot of the stuff, all the roads do lead to Rome, historically. And, you know, like they say, you strike at the heart in any battle. You go to the source of a lot of the stuff, and you have a lot more of an impact than if you were just taking on some issue kind of that a lot of people couldn't relate to. But this is a common denominator for a lot of people who have had their kids taken, who've had, you know, the level of, as you know, child abuse in the Catholic system is unbelievable. It's just, it's mind-boggling how huge it is.
I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on the United Nations God, Sky, Earth initiative that you could share with us, perhaps.
Why don't you tell me about this? I'm not too informed about that.
Well, neither am I. I've been trying to find out more about it, but basically it appears the United Nations, the good folks at the United Nations, not the Agenda 21 types, but the God, Sky, Earth initiative people are trying to organize a redistribution of wealth and debt forgiveness and send out prosperity packages over a number of installments. I think it's 11 installments. But before that can happen, it appears that the only way to keep the powers that be, and that are becoming less, from keeping their grubby little fingers on it and controlling it, is to set up banks in every one of the states. That would be basically a public trust type of bank, protected by basically the people of the community through common law. So we're scrambling here as best we can to just get all of the counties in America established, because I think that's going to happen before any kind of model similar to that could happen. You know, an introduction of a new currency, total debt forgiveness, all of those kinds of things. So I'm trying to find out whether I'm really behind the UN initiative, the God, Sky, Earth initiative, and I really haven't been able to conclude yet how real or not it is. Some of the folks in my circles are talking about it, and I was just curious if you knew anything about it. But their website is godskyEarth.org.
Well, you know, I hear bits and pieces, of course, and my general experience and I guess policy on this stuff is any institution that's in existence now is compromised by definition. It's kind of like when I meet clergy in the Protestant or Catholic churches. They're good intention, but ultimately they're still putting money into the plate. They're still funding this corporate body. At the UN, for example, I've worked with a couple of NGOs there who have been trying to get a motion in to have the Vatican expelled from the General Assembly and even from an observer status, especially since there was never a vote taken. They just kind of invited themselves in to the UN. But you know what it often comes down to is you got to say, well, at the end of the day, who is this initiative going to help? Where is it coming from? Do we have full disclosure on that? I think we have to have that as a bottom line kind of way we're operating with these things. And something connected to that I wanted to mention is, I talked earlier about this Pope Francis now and the incredible gymnastics he's doing to try to make it look like is reforming itself. We work with a number of groups in Rome who have connections with fairly senior people in the Vatican. This is how we found out that there's an attempt now to shut down our court through this thing called the Holy Alliance, which is the Jesuit-run spy agency and assassination bureau. But one of those sources told us that they are fully convinced that this guy, Pope Francis, is not actually the Pope. He was brought in for damage control purposes. He doesn't wear the papal ring. He doesn't live in the Vatican. He doesn't have any security around him, which they've spun to make it look like, oh, he's a man of the people just wandering around. No Pope who was actually Pope would ever be able to walk around without massive protection. And he makes policy statements that the cardinals then disavow. And that would never happen if he was actually the Pope. So we pretty much believe now that Ratzinger is still the actual Pope. He's kind of in the shadows. This guy is brought in like that song and dance he did with Obama the other day. They sit around and smile for the cameras and say generalities, but he's just there to as the distraction right now, and he's not actually in any position of authority. So I mean, this is he may have symbolic authority, but where the buck stops, it's we know with the Black Pope, with the Jesuits, with their bankers, that's the real power in Rome. Right.
Well, so I'm wondering if you happen to know or not whether the UN itself is under a charter that is basically under Roman Curious law.
Right. Well, we haven't seen the paperwork on that, but we know, for example, the International Criminal Court is, and that's affiliated with the UN.
Would that include the International Court of Justice and the International Commercial Court?
Yeah, all of it. I mean, like where did it all come from originally? I had kind of graphic proof of this when I got ordained into the United Church of Canada, which is a nominal Protestant church. It said right on my ordination certificate that I was part of the Holy Catholic Church. And I went and I said, wait a minute, what is this all about? And they said, oh, that just means universal. Well, I said, no, there's a capital C there. And what I figured out later is because the United Church was formed by an act of Parliament, which is the Crown, the Crown of England is itself a subsidiary of the Vatican through the Treaty of Verona that made kings of England vassals of the Pope. We know about the Bank of England and their ties with the Vatican Bank, the City of London. So, I mean, it all, like I say, traces back there if you do enough research.
Right. Yeah, I kind of figured that was the case with at least what's going on with The Hague, that they were actually under UCC and Admiralty Maritime and all of that. So, but thank you.
Well, the proof with these things is always how they act. Like the Center for Constitutional Rights in New York brought a case for 4 years. They brought a case against Joseph Ratzinger, showing how he had ordered bishops all over the world, including America, ordered them to cover up child rape. There was 22,000 pieces of evidence they gave to the International Criminal Court, which then a few months ago says, no, we can't convict the guy, we can't do a court case, there's no evidence. Well, excuse me. So they work openly in cahoots.
Well, that's a frustration. I mean, it'd be nice if something like the God, Sky, Earth initiative was able to manifest, but it just seems like there's so many booby traps along the way to getting the wealth restored to the people of the world. So,
right, it's kind of like in any local child trafficking thing. For every honest cop, there's another cop right next to him who's involved. So you're not going to use that system to reform itself, right?
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah.
People in power never give up their power willingly.
That's right.
Hey, Laura, do we have you with us now?
Well, incidentally, anyway, there's an organisation called the British Constitutional Group, and what Roger Hayes is trying to do is exactly what I can't work out who was talking now, but one of you guys were mentioning about in America. Well, Roger Hayes from the BCG group wants the people, and that's why they're calling it the lawful bank.
Right.
So I've sent everybody the links and all the emails.
God, that almost seems like an oxymoron. We have to, something has to give here. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that the guiding principle in all of this stuff is power you're facing de facto or de jure, right? We know the courts now are de facto courts operating under commercial law. As a matter of fact, more and more the Canadian flag is from courts. You just have the City of London symbol there and nothing else. And I was with a couple of months ago in the BC Supreme Court in British Columbia. One of the native guys I was with got up and actually asked the judge for her oath of office and whether this was a public or a private court, and she wouldn't answer. So, I mean, this is more of a de facto power, not anything lawful. And then,
Well, of course, in all of the reading I've been doing, you have to take those things in your paperwork, or before you even go to court. You need to establish that this is a credible oath-taking and oath-keeping judge, and establish that you are in a common court rather than their game.
Right.
So the phrase I read was, court cases are won in the paperwork long before you even get close to the bar. And I would imagine your paperwork is rather detailed and complicated, I wouldn't say convoluted, complicated as such that there were so many details that had to be covered in presenting your case.
Right. Well, I should tell people that you can go and look at the evidence from the case at itccs.org. And in the right-hand margin of that website, you'll also see our first draft of our common law training manual that actually goes into a lot of this stuff, how a actual de jure common law court operates under the authority of the jury, not the magistrate, operating according to due process and legal procedure and all of that stuff. But it's really important for people to know that a lot of what they've been told about the law is statute law, which is what government creates for itself, and not, there's a really important thing everybody needs to know, and that is no statute has binding effect on people without their consent. No statute. So, any government rule they bring in doesn't have any binding authority over the citizens without their consent. Now, that is an incredibly powerful weapon when people take that to heart and start practicing it.
Yeah.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Hi.
Yep.
Yes.
Hi, I'm so sorry I'm late, Andy. I was running around looking for a new mic. My mic wasn't working.
That's okay. This is Laura, and we've got Kevin on the line, Troy and Sash.
Hi.
Hi, Kevin. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
I'm happy to be here today. I was also I was helping type up a beautiful paper for a friend who has to file it today, and so for a few minutes there I was kind of just making a few corrections, but I was listening, and I just wanted to say to the last thing that was just said about how people can go and learn this stuff. Everybody needs to learn this stuff, but what's so beautiful about National Liberty Alliance is that there's people who are willing to learn it now and are willing to protect the other people who are, what I like to say, still asleep. And we're going to put ourselves in between the people and the government to protect them until they have the opportunity to learn it for themselves. So we're being aggressive here in America as far as getting into the courts and stopping these courts from hurting the people. It's not going to be like a permanent thing. It's going to be permanent. We're always going to be there. But our goal is, until the people have the opportunity to learn, our jobs are going to be to protect them. And we're going to do that with providing a mailbox and like a phone line for the people that if they feel that they're being hurt, they'll be able to get a hold of us either by mail or by calling us, and we'll be able to help them.
Fantastic. That's great. Good work.
The problem I run into, of course, is the people who don't understand this. When you try to explain it, no matter how hard you explain or how well or whatever, they just cannot grasp the concept that they have power, that they have rights. I mean, they know they have these rights, but they don't know how to engage them or enforce them. And if you don't use them, you lose them.
Yep.
Well, I think the key for the National Liberty Alliance, which I know is what they have in mind, I imagine, is the educational programs that will develop once these states unify and the state can figure out what it wants to do at the state level for the people. Then those county organizers and state organizers can get together to develop the educational content for these programs so that we can hold regular, let's say, once a week meetings where people can come in and the state representatives, as it were, can share knowledge that the public doesn't have at this time and try and do outreach that way. So we don't have those educational programs in place per se at this time because that's going to be a very local thing where the administrators come together and figure out the best approaches. But the National Liberty Alliance is laid out really well. It's really easy for people to learn if they want to get involved. And it's a beautiful thing, and it's coming along wonderfully. And I'm looking forward to all of us working together to figure it all out and make this work. I
think you can't emphasize that enough because as you probably found in your own actions, when I was in South Dakota a few weeks ago, they tried to convene a common court, and they couldn't find any jurors because people didn't have the level of understanding to operate. They needed to be educated. So that kind of middle wheel needs to go in place first, the education and the organizing the communities to be educated, and then people feel competent to be part of those juries and the court.
Well, I know that here myself in Oregon with the people that we're doing this with, we're all going to be coming together to develop those educational programs, and I'm very into education. So I'm going to definitely my main focus is going to be on how do we get word out in a very organized way. People can mine through the stuff in, let's say, 3 clicks or less kind of thing, and learn what they need to know.
Well, National Liberty Alliance does have a 6-hour course for people who are willing to, after we have the presentations and the elections, we hand them this little, we call it a flyer. If they want to sign up to be a jurist, there is a 6-hour course provided to them for them to have a better understanding of their position, to kind of bring them, get them informed. And we follow like the KISS system. So they do have a simple 6-hour course plus a jury's handbook, which is a long handbook. It would take me much more than 6 hours to read, that we can provide them.
Great.
But there is one thing I have to applaud the National Liberty Alliance about is that even without registering to become a jurist, the educational material that's on the site is pretty thorough. There is a lot there.
It is. I do think a lot of folks are going to definitely have questions, though, and I like the idea of having on a very local level facilities where people can meet face-to-face each week and do a question and answer session for an hour or two kind of thing, and meet other people in the community.
That's powerful because I find that it's only the face-to-face contact that gets people confident of one another and themselves. Internet doesn't do that at all. You got to have the human contact. And I was going to say to the brother from Oregon, I'm coming down the West Coast within a couple of months, and I'd like to hook up with you. So please send me your email.
I sure will. Thank you. I'd love to meet you face to face. Really appreciate your work.
I'd like to be in on that too. Have a get together and sit down and just really have a meeting of the minds.
Well, wonderful things are happening on both the ITCCS and the National Liberty Alliance thing. So I think we just need to keep plugging away as we've been doing, and people are becoming aware. It's really wonderful to see.
And I was going to suggest, too, there's a great news network in Salem, Oregon, Salem News, salem-news.com. Tim King, he's a vet, and he publishes our stuff all the time. It gets hundreds of thousands of hits. So please hook up with them. I'll send you the link.
Yeah, I will definitely arrange to meet up with him for sure. Thank you for the link. Appreciate it.
And if you're very lucky, Kevin, you might get a song with Stash. He might sing you a song. He's a musician.
All right.
Well, Troy's no slouch either. So.
Thank you.
Right.
Yeah, do you come here to Portland? I mean, there's music every night. So.
All right. Okay.
Anyway, back on track here. So, what I'd like to know is where are you headed? I know you're going over to Europe to deal with these things, Kevin. But what are your immediate plans? Where are you headed right now?
I'm on the west coast of Canada for another week, and then I'm going down over to Europe for about a month. On my way back, I'm heading all the way through the States again, starting on the East Coast, and hitting a lot of different groups, probably at least a dozen cities, and then end up on the West Coast probably by June. So I'll send this out, my itinerary. I don't like to post too much too soon because I found sabotage happen more easily that way. So we do it kind of as we do in an underground movement in the cell structure, where a lot of groups are operating not necessarily connected, but still doing the local work. So, yeah, that's how I tend to operate.
Awesome. I do have one other question for you, Kevin. Have you talked to John Darish, the founder of the National Liberty Alliance, yet, or have you met him?
I haven't met or talked to him yet, but people keep trying to connect us, and we send emails and they don't get through, so that's not surprising. I mean, the Internet's continually sabotaged that way, but it's one of my priorities to do that. I'll be in New York again very soon, so on my way out, so maybe it can happen then. I think he's in New England, isn't he?
I believe so. I can just say that I can imagine you guys will have a fantastic time together.
Yeah, look forward to it.
And that's one thing we've learned to deal with on the internet is the trolls under the firewall.
Yeah, that's right.
Are you going to be in New York on the 22nd?
No, I'll be in Europe by then, but I'll be coming back through New York in May.
I am flying to New York. I won't know. We have a hearing coming up, a motions hearing coming up with my husband's case on the 8th, and then I'll know if I'll be able to fly to New York because we've got a trial scheduled for the 23rd, and the DA's not ready anymore, so they want to move the date. If they push it back, then I'm flying to New York on the 22nd to support the National Liberty Alliance over there. They're taking this to a federal court. I just got the email last night that the date is confirmed for the 22nd, so apparently something happened yesterday, and they were able to file their papers. Did you, Troy and Stash, did you hear about that or read that email?
I did not get that email. If you could forward that to me, if that's possible, that would be fantastic.
I'm not up on today's events yet, so...
I can send you contacts you could probably work with in New York, so let's be sure to write to each other.
As far as I can tell, lots of people... Sorry, Stash.
And this is how networks are developed and plans come into fruition. Just contact.
Right. I've got to leave in about 5 or 10 minutes, so I just want to ask anybody if they had any more questions or.
Not at this time, but thank you so much for your time today.
You're welcome.
And I have to thank you. I mean, being, as I said, a devout parent, I have to thank you for all your efforts on behalf of the children. That is impressive.
Well, having two daughters of my own, I had a motivation doing this work, but, meeting everybody who had suffered in this way, like I said, you can't turn away once you have this knowledge. Let me just remind people of our websites. The Tribunal website, www.itccs.org. The Common Law Court website out of Brussels is www.iclcj.com. So for International Common Law Court of Justice, iclcj.com. And people can write to me, hidden from history 1, like number 1, hidden from history 1 at gmail.com.
Thank you.
That's brilliant, Kevin. Just one last question before you go. From my point of view, my wife's been in the care system, been abused by the Catholic Church up in Glasgow. You can Google I was raped by a priest. That's her story. The kids have been taken off of us, obviously, a long time ago now, and we're still fighting, never give up. Do you think what they're doing to the children over in the UK is a form of trafficking, because they're taken away from parents for lies and often the future risk of emotional harm? They're trafficked in a way that everyone's gaining money. The children are never in one place at any time, and sometimes they go abroad. I mean, does that fit into the definition of child trafficking?
Absolutely. And moving, if you look at the United Nations Convention on Genocide, point number 5, when they're defining what genocide is, it says moving children from one group to another, period. You move a child from their family into another family, and it's genocide because it means that family is going to be destroyed. And there's a big financial motivation in the system everywhere to do exactly that. Not just grab people's livelihoods and land, but their children, because they're commodities. They can be traded like drugs or arms or anything. So this is what we're facing, a huge global network of this, and we can't play by their rules because that's how they keep everybody in the box. So this is the power of the common law courts and, the direction we're taking this.
That's brilliant, Kevin. I mean, if there's no more questions then, guys, should we let Kevin go? He's got another interview very shortly.
I have nothing further, but again, thank you.
Yes, indeed.
All my best to you.
Thank you, and to everyone. And it's really good connecting with all of you. I look forward to emailing you and talking to you more and meeting you soon.
Yeah, well, I'll hope to find where you are during April and May, and we'll hook up somewhere in the Midlands.
Count on it, Andy. I'll seek you out. We'll get together.
No problem at all.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.
You take care.
Take care, Kevin.
Yep. Bye for now.
Bye.
Right, guys, we're here if you want to move on to common law and to let us know how you're getting on since the last time we spoke.
Well, we have 6 states done.
8.
I don't know. Is it 8?
It's 8 now. We had 3 in the last 4 days. We have Arizona came on board, New Hampshire, and let me get the other one in front of my view here. Massachusetts, yesterday.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. Okay, Oregon.
I know, we got to get it.
Well, we still have so many sections of Oregon that are just uninformed as of yet.
They're rural. Yeah, they're rural. The east side of Oregon is farmland, and most of those people don't have internet or cell phones. They just want to, do their farming, and they have that right. But those are our patriots. Those are the ones that we definitely need to reach out to, who know what's going on and know this stuff. That's why I'm not sure. I'm thinking I'm going to buy a bicycle and I'm going to start pedaling my way across the eastern side of Oregon with little flyers.
It's a long trip. I've driven it. I've driven all over this state on musical tours, and there's a whole lot of open space there.
You know, the good news is most of the other counties in the state pretty much get their news sources through the tri-metropolitan area here. So once we can get the tri-metropolitan area constituted, it's going to be a lot easier for folks out there in the other counties to get news. And it's going to kind of marginalize their fear factor that they can't do anything in their county when they see that the Tri-County area has made its thing happen. And there's some other good prospects, too, that I do need to reach out to, and I'll talk with you more, Laura, probably this evening about that state organization thing. But there's a gentleman who's a sheriff named Tim Mueller, and I'm not that familiar with him. I've just heard of him, but apparently he is 100% behind the new Constitutional Sheriffs and Police Officers Association resolution of January 24th, 2014. And if that's the case, if he's the good sheriff, Lynn County should be a cinch. So I'm going to do some outreach and see if I can get Tim to at least get me some folks that might be interested or trying to do the same stuff that we're trying to do with National Liberty Alliance and get that done. I think the county I'd really like to get done the most right now is actually Yamhill County. I have a real issue with this Evergreen Airlines. Not the fact that they're in business, but some of the business they're doing needs to be stopped. And so I don't know. We're just working away, but hopefully here in May we will have the Tri-Metropolitan County area constituted, and if that goes, the other states should fall pretty in line, that is, pretty quickly, I would think.
That is the benefit here. Troy and I are in an area, our Portland metro area encompasses 3 different counties, and it is the most populous area of the state of Oregon. So
yeah, it's close to half the population of the entire state.
So all we can do is keep moving forward.
Mm-hmm. It's going well.
We do have a gentleman who will be joining us. He did sign up. He's in Southern Oregon. He's excited. He's got some great connections in Southern Oregon. He's down in Jackson County. I had the opportunity to talk to him on the phone yesterday. It was very exciting. What we're experiencing now is Andy, about 3 years ago, there were people in Southern Oregon that were trying to do common law grand juries and did, in fact, successfully form some common law grand juries for individual cases, and it did kind of cause an uproar, and it kind of made their lives a bit complicated. That being said, they were kind of hesitant at first to reach out to us because, they kind of got attacked. But they're going to join with us now, is my understanding, and I think this gentleman and another gentleman that I talked to yesterday were a part of that, and that happened 3 years ago. I'd like to sit down with them and talk about how they did it compared to how we're doing it today.
Yeah.
But as far as I've been in real close contact with Florida, and they're doing something that's similar to New York, but they might take another avenue or another path, and it's okay because either way we go, the point is that the people have raised their hands and said, yes, we want this. They know that we're being hurt. They know that nobody's overseeing these judges, and they're tired of it, and they're so willing for somebody to come in and to help them, and it kind of gives them the motivation to stand up with us. And any way that we go about doing this, when we, and what I mean is, New York's doing a quo warranto, and I'm not sure if that's how Florida's going to do it, but any way that we go about doing this, it's not wrong, because we're speaking on behalf of the people. And so it's going to be really exciting to see how all these states are doing it as far as how they're addressing the courts and how they're going to get in. And it's going to be a domino effect. It's going to be as soon as one of the states or even the counties get in to the courts, it's over. It's going to go. It's going to spread like wildfire. There's going to be nowhere for them to go. there's going to be no one to stop them. No one to stop us. I'm so excited. I'm like, when I talk about this stuff, I'm so giddy and bouncing in my chair because it's over. It's only a matter of time, which is why I'm flying to New York to support in numbers our brothers and sisters in New York who have a date in a federal court because, what is it, a judge? One particular judge that's trying to stop them. And I guess what they did was, I'm sorry, did you guys already discuss this earlier, Troy Stash?
No, we haven't.
Okay. So they had filed a quo warranto on behalf of the people and went into the court. And the clerk, I guess she filed the paper. It was 57 pages long. You can find it on National Liberty Alliance's website. It's a beautiful piece of paper. And they filed it, gave it a number, and then apparently one particular judge says, no, we can't have that filed. And so they removed or rescinded the number off the file and sent it back. Now, we have laws here in America, and I'm sure in many other countries, that say you can't do that. And I don't know. John says that he's never heard of it before. There has been a few cases where, something would be filed and sent back, but that's a 20-year sentence for those clerks. They're pointing that out to the clerk. The sheriff was supposed to be spoken with yesterday. I would go as far as saying that the sheriff was probably spoken with yesterday, but I don't have any confirmation on that.
Sure.
And they're going to be there with the sheriff to file the papers if they haven't already. And they will be seen in federal court on the 22nd. So the date was confirmed on the email, but as far as all the juicy details, I don't quite have those.
What this comes down to, basically, is that New York is the test case and will set precedent. Once it's done in New York, then we have court precedent for the rest of the country. So we're all watching with bated breath as New York. That was the reason, because they were denied, was the reason for the quo warranto. Saying you have to comply. It is the law. And that is, we're just waiting for the outcome on that. And looking forward to it, because also, if they can pull off this coup, when they pull off this coup in New York, it will give us added, incentive and whatever here on the opposite coast to take action. And it should bolster the public's willingness to jump in. I'm done.
It sounds absolutely wonderful just to think that one more thing that happens in a court in New York could change America forever, and probably the rest of the world. I'm still a little bit, skeptical. You obviously started somewhere. That one area got captured, and it was yours. We need encouragement to do that over here in the UK and Canada. How do you do that first one? I think if you get one, then it gives encouragement for the second one, the 8th one, and the 100th one. It's getting that first one is a difficult one.
Well, you need a crusader like John Darish and his cohorts. They just decided the time has come, and they were not going to back down. And they have made major strides, and they did their homework. They did their research. They read the actual law and stopped listening to the naysayers and went against the status quo. Somebody has to make the first step.
I've actually read the National Liberty Alliance and all their articles connected, and it's only been about 3 weeks, but I would say I know common law on what you're doing and how it's done. I think it's dead simple. It's just having them, pardon the expression, Laura, it's just having enough people with the balls to just do it.
Well, I got the balls on the West Coast.
She does too. They say that when a cause is first started, patriots are hard to find. Because the patriots are the people who stand up and are willing to lose everything. But as the cause grows, the number of patriots grows as the risk declines. And that's a shame.
Well, imagine this. Imagine having a stage at like a county fair, and you just get up there and you simply say, have you been arrested for traveling without a driver's license? Or has your child been taken away and you didn't get a fair date in court? Or were you on parole and probation for like 6 years because every time you turned around you were never satisfying your PO officer? You're going to have the entire crowd's attention as soon as you say, well, they didn't have the right to do that.
Also,
it's really simple.
Also, if you'll remember, Troy, what was the first tack I took with the gentleman who let us use his venue? Are you tired of outrageous fees, of insane judgments against? He said flat out, there's a campaign in America against small business.
Yeah, there is.
Well, according to the Constitution, we have the right to engage in commerce unfettered.
Free enterprise.
Free enterprise. And as soon as I brought up that point, he was all for it. He wanted to be part of it. So it's just, you have to, unfortunately, appeal to a person's own self-interest. Most people will not take action unless their interests are affected. And this is basically, I think, what our whole message is. We have to get to everyone that whether you like it or not, you're affected. If you're under a government system such as ours or that of the UK, you are taken for granted as being part of their chattel, their commodities. You have really no rights other than what they deem to give you. So you have to appeal to people's own self-interest to get them motivated. And once they see a course, then a lot of people, I can't say most people, a lot of people will stand up and take action. And I've read that it only takes 10% to change a whole society.
Well, I will definitely need to call Brad and thank him for offering us the venue to do these presentations and elections. It's a fantastic venue, and it's a great location for the Tri-County area, too. I love it.
Indeed. So we're now we have to get the word out to the Tri-County area.
Yeah.
And that is in process.
Yeah, that's going to start for me in full force on Monday. So I got to finish up some stuff I'm in the middle of now, this remainder of this week, and then I'm on it. So I'm going to be creating some press releases to send out to groups, that are already interested and have some knowledge of this kind of stuff. For example, legal aid groups, those kinds of people would be a good group type to send an ad of some type to let them know, hey, we'd love to have you there and participating. So that's going to happen starting Monday for me.
Also,
I do have some good news for you, Laura, about the state organizer thing. We'll talk about that off at the end of the show. So.
Also, I would say in those press releases that we should offer an invitation to anyone from any of the other surrounding counties who wish to come to this, because if we could get 3 people from 3 other counties, we could have 6 instead of 3 in one swelled foop.
Yeah.
Another thing
So it all
that
comes
people
down
need
to organization, Andy.
Another thing that people need to think about is they're like, is this going to cost us more money? No, it's going to save the county so much money because we're going to shut down things like family court, traffic court, parole and probation.
Yep.
They need victims. They need criminals. They need, troubled teens. They need all these things in order to get federally funded agencies when really we don't need them. And
right.
So that's why we all have these problems. It's like I was talking to a gentleman in Washington who his kids were taken away from him here in Oregon, and it's this beautiful family, mom and dad and two beautiful girls, and the grandmother had an interest in the children, and I'm not sure the whole story, but CPS got involved in order for grandma to keep the kids. And the way that it appears that they're working, and the way that I have understanding that they work, is if in certain cities and in certain counties, if we don't have crooked moms and dads, well then CPS doesn't have a job and they don't have an income. So if we've got counties with great moms and dads and CPS is located there, they're going to establish crooked moms and dads in order to justify why they need to be there in the first place. And this is where our problem lies, because they're the aggressor criminals, and they're making their case in order to justify their office to get the fundings that they need. And so in reality, it's all about money, and it's all about these offices. It's kind of like energy assistance. They have these little offices located in all these little counties, and it's all the people who need a few bucks to keep their electricity on, and yet the office that's established there makes their money off of the people who need money. It's all these in-between offices that we just don't need, and people can't sit down and think of the simplicity of how it was created in order to create all these jobs. And in fact, these jobs in these offices are actually hurting the people and causing more money or more debt for us than if we would just let them go. So once we shut some of these things down, there's going to be an abundance of funding. It's really going to be quite the opposite. I had somebody talk to me a few days ago about, how much, is this going to cost us? Is this going to be a new tax? Is this going to be a new bill for the people because you guys are, going to create an office? Well, no, because the funding is already there. And the things that we're going to shut down are that funding that's going to the county can actually be distributed amongst the people and give us a break.
And
that's
we get
another
rid of
thing.
Manufactured guilt. That's what you were talking. Manufactured guilt. It is not true people doing bad things. It is manufactured and fairy tales, basically.
That's a good way of putting it. Our Maggie Tuttle that were listening earlier on, she said everything everyone makes you do is based on guilt. If you speed on the motorway, okay, you pay a fine, but the police make you feel guilty and so on, It's all about, it's guilt and power. But if you rose up and stood up against all that, then, and you wasn't guilty, you would be the winner then. I know crime never pays, but it's a guilt factor. A lot of people are scared, so therefore they won't challenge nobody in authority.
Well, I learned a long time ago, I don't do guilt. That's someone else thinking I should feel bad for something I did that they didn't like. Well, if I did it, the chances are 99% that I meant to do it and I wanted to do it, and I really don't care if you like it or not.
Well stated.
I like that.
also the same reason I don't do jealousy. Jealousy is fear of losing something you own. How can you be jealous of someone? You don't own anyone. They go hand in hand, guilt and jealousy. That's just my personal take on it.
Do you have any questions, Andy, as far as how we're doing this, or does anybody have any questions that are listening in?
Well, last time you did sort of say how you're going to do it, and I was just wondering if we could have just recapped on the beginning, which you already did. But if we fast forward a little bit, when all the counties have been taken, who is going to be in over all controls? Are you saying that maybe the president can carry on with his job, but under the new rules? Or will there be just a switch of power? Because that's technically what it is. When someone's ruling a country, it's power again. So one question I did get in was, if you sack the president and got somebody from the people there, it's just swapping one power leader to another.
Well, there's things that people don't understand as far as D.C. goes and the president, and it's quite backwards compared to how it was supposed to be. See, the 13 original colonies that came together established the federal government. That being said, the federal government is below the state as far as the chain of command on the totem pole. The federal government is the low man on the totem pole. When it comes to D.C., it is in fact a separate country of its own, and it clearly states that they only have jurisdiction within their 10 square miles. So if the president stays in D.C., that has nothing to do with what we're doing in Oregon, for example. The people come first. Well, I'm sorry. Scratch that. Our Creator comes first. Then the people. Then the people established the states and the state government. Then the states established the federal government, and that is the chain of command. And it's that simple. It's just everybody believes that the president is above all of us, and that's just simply not the case. So he'll get his wake-up call. He will get his, I like to say, comeuppance. When Troy Stash and I focus on Oregon and the territory within, anything that D.C. and the president has done within our state, and see, Oregon is actually just a separate company or country. We're all different countries, and we all came together to unite, and the federal government is mainly just our military. They're not supposed to be in our schools and our healthcare and all of that stuff. So our focus in Oregon, and I can really only speak on behalf of Oregon, we can remove them from our state. They have no authority in our state. Our state government are the ones that are in trouble, as far as I'm concerned, with allowing the federal government to come into this state to hurt the people. And that will all change. That will all be addressed. They can conduct business within the state, but they would have to do it just like anybody else, and they don't get to do it hurting people. They can come here and conduct business should they choose, and the people in Oregon can conduct business with them should they choose, but it's a voluntary system, and it can't be enforced on everybody. Does that make sense?
Well, if you go back to the original intent of the Constitution, it was to limit the powers of government, not to limit the people. It was written for our protection, and we are, as she said, 50 independent nation states that formed a republic. The president himself is no more than the CEO and president of the United States of America Incorporated. located in a foreign country, a foreign corporation in a 10 square mile logic-free zone. So
yeah, he's the commander of our military, and that's it.
And the government was really only tasked with, a couple of major tasks, which is providing for the common defense and providing for the national infrastructure and regulating interstate commerce. It has no effect within the states. It only regulates that, we play nice with each other. So if we put them back in their place, we're not overthrowing the government. We're restoring the proper operation of our country.
Yeah.
So
I like to think of it as law enforcement instead of legality enforcement.
Yeah, talking about law enforcement, are the police still welcome to do their job in their way, and the banks, or are you going to change all that as well?
That's all got to change. Police
it depends on who you ask. I don't know if you're familiar, Andy, with the United States Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association, but they signed into effect a resolution on just this past January 24th that pretty much outlines what they're able to do now. And I would imagine that if I had been in law enforcement, and everything I read in that statement would have been different from what I had been taught that I could do. So it's kind of almost like a mandate in effect to clean up your act if you're a peace officer. Or a patrolman is a more accurate expression, because an officer by proxy implies that you were elected into that position. And a lot of these law enforcement people actually just went and filled out a job application and took some training and got signed up.
And if you look at it
when
from
it
a
comes
business
to the
point,
police
they're all
officers,
corporations. Everything outside of the sheriff's office in the United States is a private corporation. Actually, police forces should be abandoned because they are just private corporate security forces, brute squads, soliciting funds from the people. The only true law enforcement officer in any county is the elected sheriff, and basically all law enforcement should be directed under the office of the sheriff. I hope that answers the question. We all went silent.
Well, you know me. I have a reputation for silent in the background, periodically.
At any rate, this is where we stand. This is the thing people have to really grasp. We're not trying to overthrow the American government. We are trying to restore the proper American government. We are trying to put things back in order the way it was, as Ben Franklin, when he was asked, what kind of government did you give us? A republic, if you can keep it. And Thomas Jefferson followed with the quotes that said, the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. Well, we have not been vigilant, and now we are, and we are working to restore that which was supposedly created. And we start at the county level, and we work up to the state level, and then once the states are organized and restored to the way they should be, we can take on the federal government, which I think we ought to just cancel their contract and, isolate them as a foreign nation that's attempting to invade America.
Well, there's only 6 or 8 million of them at the end of the day. We should find an island and we can just send them all to, and they can do their thing on their island.
Well, hey, the Brits did it with Australia. Yeah, they're not part of the colony.
So unless it's willing to become a 51 51st state within the 50 contiguous states, as it were. And they'd have to be willing to reorganize their model to be under the constitutional law of the land and natural common law. That's the way I see it. Otherwise, they need to leave the country.
We keep getting Skype attacked. I don't know why. And me and Laura keeps getting knocked off.
Uh-oh. Well,
I was
there they
wondering
are.
what happened.
More of the trolls under the firewall.
Yeah, I changed my firewall last week, actually. I probably better get a better one.
You should not be on the internet without a firewall and an antivirus and anti-malware and anti-everything. It's not a safe place.
No, I had Windows firewall, and I had this great antivirus. It would tell you who's spying on you and everything. Anyway, the subscription run out, and I've got one of them freebies, and it don't seem to be working very good.
Right.
Just for the record, try Komodo.
Yeah, Komodo is very excellent. I use it myself. Spelled with a C.
I was gonna say just before that all robotic on me. I don't know if anybody else heard that, but there is something like a robot.
Well, you broke up on that one.
And then I was dropped.
We lost you on that one, Laura.
An actual crime, where somebody's getting hurt or property is being damaged or stolen, we still have a duty.
Most of your
don't know what's going on, guys. Don't know what's going on at all.
Yeah, it was quite bizarre.
The people didn't want to do it. The people, can you hear me okay?
Now we can, yes.
Uh-oh. Okay, so I don't know how much of that was
about the last 2 minutes was garbled. Or a minute, anyway.
Okay. Anyways, peace officers only have the authority that people also have. They can't do anything can't do without their badge.
Right. Yeah, their authority is an extension of our willingness to protect each other within the community. And they're not allowed to do anything we're not allowed to do to them when they're in the public sector as a private citizen, that's for sure.
And they also have no arrest authority by law.
Right. That's where the lack of education with the general public comes in, because, their fear or whatever the mechanism that kicks in when they are approached by somebody carrying a weapon on display basically puts them into that kind of subconscious thinking, okay, don't hurt me, or whatever you need, and that's an intimidation factor. If, more people knew their rights, they'd be able to say, okay, well, I understand that you've pulled me over for whatever it is, but what is the nature of your investigation? You should be the one asking the questions before you answer any questions. And most people don't know that.
In fact, you don't talk to them at all other than to ask them questions.
Yeah, exactly. What's the nature of your investigation? Am I under arrest? Is there an emergency? Those kinds of questions are all valid questions to ask. And you definitely want to get their bond number, their insurance, and you want to see their driver's license, because most police officers are actually using their driver's license that was issued to them, which is not a commercial license, and yet they're driving a public commercial vehicle in the conveyance of commerce. And most of them, if you ask them to show them your ID, or show you their ID, they're just using like a Class D regular old license.
which by regulation is still a commercial license.
In a sense.
No, it's all licensing in Oregon by statute deals with commercial commerce.
I just think their license should say commercial, CDL number instead of just DL number. That's my point.
So should the Class D. All driver's licenses should say they are commercial in nature, because that is the point. They are only able to regulate people doing business. Other businesses, they are not, the people do not have to answer to police officers.
Right.
Which comes back to common law again.
Right. Well, if everyone knew that there's two things that have to happen when confronting a policy enforcer, and that is the establishment of status first, and then start discussing jurisdiction. And if people understood that, they'd have a lot less troubles.
Mm-hmm. And this is part of our education process.
Do you have any questions?
Now Andy's pulling a Troy. What are you thinking back there, Andy?
I'm notorious, Andy, for kind of just disappearing from the conversation until somebody prompts me, and then I can't shut up for 5 minutes. So that's what they mean by pulling a Troy, just in case you're wondering.
Are you there, Mr. Andy?
Well, I say we give them another couple of minutes here, and if not, I'll go ahead and make any announcements and pass out appreciation and gratitude. So I'm guessing that we're collectively kind of running the meeting at the moment. Andy sent me a message saying that he was being hit by a Skype attack, and then we were having a little bit of trouble there with Laura when she was speaking there for about a moment, with it all garbled really badly. At least that's what I was hearing. So I don't know. We may have lost him at the moment while he's restarting his system, perhaps, to get over this Skype issue or whatever. Not sure, but.
Well, so here we are.
Anyway, so Laura, you on the call still? Well, it looks like it says here, Andy just sent me a message saying I got kicked off the station and the show has ended. Sorry, guys. I need a better firewall. So the show is officially over. So thank you, guys, anybody that's on the call. Really appreciate it. All right. I hope to see you soon.
Yeah, really, brother. Well, in that case, then let's cut this off, and I'll talk to you later on.
All right. You take good care of you and have a great day.
All right. Take care, brother.
Bye-bye.